Sheena Ringo, Shoso Strip. A couple of days have passed for you, but only a couple of seconds have passed for me since I did the reaction to Stoicism, which was bizarre and I really liked it. And I think to me, it was a really interesting song, but I feel like it's supposed to really function as an interlude, which is why I didn't want to waste too much time. Yes, we're going to get straight into the next song, which is called Tsuki ni Makainu, which is translated as A Broken Man and Moonlight. Very poetic. Look, we just came out of Crime and Punishment a little bit earlier, went from Stoicism, which I really like, but I think is probably designed to function as an interlude. We're going to jump straight into this song. It's been a really interesting album, but I want to jump into this without wasting too much time so we can just launch straight into it, get the effect, and talk a little bit more afterwards. So here we go. Back to that swinging rhythm. Again, that sort of dirty sounding guitar, the bass up in the mid-range, full of grit, very grungy. Nice pivot into the chorus there, I think. That mix between sort of grungy sounds along with this kind of swinging beat melody makes for a really compelling kind of combination. The development of the melody in this is so nice. If you listen to the balance between the bass and the guitar and the vocal melody, those three layers of notation, so rewarding how they're perfect against each other. right, stop before the next song starts. I didn't expect it to, so it just suddenly ended. I was like, oh, it's ended. Right. This song, this is an interesting one because I have to say, on one level, from a purely songwriting level, this again might be one of my favorite songs so far. But this definitely leaves me with a couple of different, well, more than a couple of points that I have to really sort of run through my head, especially on a first listen. I mean, first thing, I love the songwriting. I love the fact that the song is almost throughout very clearly and pronounced that it's working around three melodies happening at the same time. The bass is playing a melody like a good bass line should do. I often say this is one of the big things that separates Japan from, especially in rock, separates Japan from so much of the rest of the world, is the fact that in Japan, the bass actually plays its own line most of the time. It's not just sitting there drilling away the chord pattern. So we've got a really nice, interesting, funky bass line. The guitar itself is also playing an interesting line of its own. The vocals have this really lovely sing-along melody. And as a result, you have three separate melodies interacting all the time. It can be, you can have songs that are too busy, don't get me wrong, but I think if you can execute a song which is well written and has three constantly flowing sets of notes playing off against each other, it's just going to be engaging to your ears. And it's really engaging on that level. I do think as well, it's also got a very enjoyable chorus. It's a sort of chorus you want to sing along to. It's got a good build up to the ending, even though the bridge itself is just kind of like a noisy, distorted guitar solo of sorts. It does feel like it builds up and ramps up to the ending. The ending, if anything, sort of finishes a little bit early so as to give you that sensation of being left wanting more, which is always, might be a little bit of a tease, but it's always a very enigmatic and interesting way of ending a song. It kind of gets you feeling like really like, yes, this is a song I want to come back to. So I have to be honest that on so many levels, I really like the way this song's written. And I must also, before I go any further, I have to give it a compliment for the fact that, yes, sonically, it is quite interesting. It's interesting to go for this very sort of higher EQ'd bass and this very weirdly distorted guitar, and the vocals kind of almost sitting in the middle, so all three of the primary instruments have the same level of prominence. I think that all works really well as a kind of an attempt to give the song an individual sound, to give it uniqueness. So not only is it really well written, but it also feels like a song that's got a very clear identity. I have to say, though, the only thing that kind of goes against this for me is I do feel that as well written as it is, and as brave as the experiment it is as well, sonically, it's one of those experiments that's brave, but ultimately kind of fails, in my opinion. I'm always going to like this song, I think. This is a song I'm always going to enjoy, but this recording, gotta be honest, I think this kind of is a bit of a worst of both worlds kind of thing, purely on the recording side. It's kind of got the overly raw, distorted sound of grunge combined with the overly compressed sound of like the turn of the millennium era when it came out. And having a song that is very grungy and distorted along with massive amounts of compression, those two things can survive on their own, but you put them together and you end up with a song which is so squelchy that it kind of, nothing feels distinct. Like I can hear there's really interesting notes, but they're kind of hard to pick out. And I don't mean hard to pick out just because it's so distorted, but because it just isn't clear. It's not like the distortion's making it into this wall of noise. It's just this squelchy, compressed distortion that leaves. And it's made worse by the fact that the bass is turned up into the mid EQ, which, as I say, it's an interesting concept, but it means now you've got the bass rising up into the middle of the EQ. The guitar's quite sort of low and growly, so that's also in the middle of the EQ, and you just end up with this. There's nothing really at the top or bottom of this song. There's no bright sounds at the top. There's no like low sounds at the bottom. It's just everything is squelched into the middle into this one over-compressed, badly EQ'd, squelchy mess. And the result is a song that, yes, it does sound quite brave, and yes, it's beautifully written. I mean, without going back and checking the others, this is at least going to be one of my favorite written songs on the album. Might well be my favorite written song on the album thus far. However, yeah, the execution is just hard to listen to, which is a shame for me. I know some people have said in previous songs on this album that they like that squelchy guitar. Personally, I think it can be useful sometimes, but I think it is kind of overused in this album. And I think the primary reason might be because this album is seriously overcompressed. Again, I'm not the sort of person who I usually don't write things off for being compressed. Overcompression to me is not a death sentence, but when you combine overcompression with certain sounds, it can be a problem. And this song kind of like drives head first into the truck. You know, it's like the compression truck is coming the other way. This is steered into the lane and just, yeah, this is going head on towards it because this is exactly the sort of sound that suffers the most heavily from compression. So, yeah, for me, the problem is just that the sound of this is quite difficult to enjoy. And yet, as someone who really loves songwriting, I can tell you right now, listening to the songwriting, I really love this song. I really love the way it's written. I think it's beautifully written. I think it's very intriguing. I think there is room to expand the arrangement. I think they could have added more. They could have been, I mean, second guitar would be the thing that most people would say, yeah, but you could have added strings or even brass, actually. I personally, I'd have gone maybe towards like some brass, you know, get some really sort of nasty sounding brass in the back of this, doing some big layered harmonies and stuff. There would be room to grow on this. But just as the core three aspects, it's beautifully written. But yeah, I think ultimately, I think there is room to expand it. There's room that more could be done, but ultimately it has to be better mixed and produced than this. I'm also not going to be overly harsh on that though, again, because again, I think this is a product of its time. I mean, as I said towards the beginning, and as I've kind of maintained throughout, this album, if Messiah Moratorium sounded like an album that was very raw and almost timeless because it just sort of avoided really appealing to any tropes of any era. You could say it had a bit of a 70s vibe, but ultimately it could have come out in any era, that album. This album definitely sounds like a product of the late 90s, early 2000s. It very much has that sound. And so, you know, things like overcompression, that was the thing of the time. And, you know, things like really squelchy distortion, that was the thing of just a little bit earlier in the 90s. So I can't really overly complain. I just think that this song has more potential than maybe comes out on the recording. I personally, though, I'm really glad I listened to it. It's going to fit into one of those strange examples of a song where actually, yes, I wouldn't mind hearing the live version. Everyone's like slamming the keyboards. Howard, check out the live version. 99% of the comments I get, Howard, check out the live version. What's this comment? Howard, check out the live version. It's like, I'm not going to react to every single song twice, okay? Maybe in my own time. But yeah, I personally enjoyed this. As a song, I didn't think the recording was great, but the song was fantastic. How does it continue from the last one? Weirdly. Weirdly. But I think this song is definitely one that I'm going to look to try and find another recording of. Anyway, as always, those are my thoughts. Get in the comments. Let me know what you think. And until I hopefully see you very soon for the next one of these. For now. Ciao, ciao.